Fellow travelers along the path of the beam, I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego, and if it please you join me here for a bit of palaver on Hail to Stephen King. That's right, y'all, the show that I do twice a week, every terrifying Tuesday, usually every spooktacular Saturday. This past weekend, Cecil decided to jump on and do a little bit of an impromptu live stream, and so yeah, my episode got bumped to the early mornings on a Sunday, but nothing wrong with that. Obviously, you still got to see me talking about Mercy, which was Blumhouse trying to adapt Grandma from the Skeleton Crew collection very, very weakly, and you know, as this being another entry in films that forgot the face of their father. Oh, and by the way, you can just call me Fuego for short, and welcome to the horror show, but this is going to be, it's one of the final entries here in 2018, and not just that, but one of the final entries of films that forgot the face of their father, in the fact that this entire series has been me looking at either TV miniseries, as we have in this case, or, you know, like film remakes, whatever the hell they may be, where an essence of the initial source material by our beloved Sai King that you see at the Tower of Tomes behind me was really lost in an egregious and nasty way, and you know, much like with Mercy, where there was an insane cast behind it, and you kind of thought that this adaptation, this reinterpretation, if you will, it's a Twiniverse, you know, you have to keep that in mind. It's not gonna be the book. Once again, lost potential and really just supremely aggravating. So the reason I decided to finally get around to doing the 2004 Salem's Lot miniseries, that it actually wasn't quite a miniseries, it was like a two-part event on TNT in June of 2004. Two different parts, two different, you know, 2-hour segments, but with the commercials it comes out to about 3 hours. A lot of talent behind this, though. Not necessarily as much behind the camera. I mean, you had an unknown writer adapting things, and then you had the director of Hard Rain, which I actually think is an awesome movie, Morgan Freeman and Christian Slater. But, you know, so not a ton behind there, but in front of it, really, really immense amount. You've got Rob Lowe playing Mears, you have, you know, Donald Sutherland, you have the dude from the Homicide Life on the Street, I want to say, and I've seen him on tons and tons of other things. The blondie's a hottie that I know has jumped around. And then you got Rutger Hauer, you know, as Barlow, for God's sake. So, I mean, decent amount of, and not just like beyond a decent amount of, you know, acting, just experience, you know, being brought to the table. But I gotta say, the biggest problem with the reinterpretation of Salem's Lot is not necessarily the beats that they honed back in on and tried to recreate, because there's a few that they do from the Tobe Hooper, you know, miniseries from the 1970s, but the biggest really criminal problem that this film has, and I will consider it a film, you know, it's not like The Stand or It, where it's like more than 2 parts, where it's like 3, 4, you know, 5, whatever. It is really, and even in this DVD format, it's presented as just one big 3-hour event, although you can tell where the commercial breaks kick in, and that's kind of crappy, unfortunately. But nonetheless, the biggest sin of sorts, you know, that this film just unfortunately perpetrates is the fact that it's one thing where you're trying to condense stuff down, you know, and that is really, especially with larger Stephen King novels, something that just has to happen. You have to trim the fat. You can't just focus upon every single little bit, or else there's no way you're gonna make a 2, even 3-hour film. It's just not possible. But when you add things that have no bearing, have no resonance, and are just really ridiculous, first and foremost, and I'm not gonna try to spoil things, because the reason we're talking about this film is because I've seen it pop up a lot in the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group, okay? And I think it's popping up a lot because of the fact that a lot of people haven't seen the 70s version, which, well, it trims enough, it doesn't really deviate. And I feel like Deviation is good in some ways. It just depends upon how it's implemented and how it's handled. And with that original miniseries, you know, I mean, you've got a great character designed for Barlow once you finally see him. You have, I mean, no big names acting-wise or anything like that in comparison with this one, where you have lots of noteworthy names. But it still had that ethereal, spooky vibe that the novel has. And, you know, I mean, the scene with, you know, kid floating up to see, you know, man, I mean, it's still one of the most unsettling and amazing that we get in the entirety of everything. And so, I don't know. The stuff that I do know, unfortunately, is that I still hold the original in high regard, but it's not like on like the highest, you know, plateau or anything like that. I don't think it's one of the absolute best Stephen King adaptations, but it's still very serviceable, and very, very good. Problem with this, though, as I was trying to elaborate on, is the fact that it adds so many additional plot points. First and foremost, I hate the framing device. I hate the fact that and I'm not going to spoil, as I said, you have Ben Mears tracking down Father Callahan to a place far from Maine, obviously, in Detroit, and he attacks him at a food bank, and things get kind of grisly, you know, from there. I don't know, aggravating, and he's essentially, Ben Mears being, after this crazy accident transpires, he's in the hospital and he's telling the story to an orderly, you know, like a male nurse who's like, you know, listening into everything, and just, that's how they frame it, seriously. It's of that tropey nature. And while we still have, you know, the same idea of, okay, you know, this remote town in Maine, you know, Jerusalem's Lot. It's got, you know, it has a quaintness, and it has a very closely knit, like, familial type vibe to a lot of the residents and stuff like that. But they inject so many unnecessary romantic intertwinements in this, and it's really the biggest folly of this film, is the fact that, so you have other characters, like, you know, you have your teacher, you have your doctor. They team together eventually, you know, with Mears and with Susan, and, you know, also Callahan to a slighter degree here, and then also the kid. But it's like, and even Eva, yeah, shout out to the lovely Lady Lily, from my life and stuff, who, it's like, so you have even a romantic aspect with her, you know, she's got, you know, the deceased husband, you know, Eva, the lady who is renting the house to Mears, or the room in the house, and it's just like, all unnecessary, completely unnecessary. From the doctor with the high school sweetheart who was way younger than him, and he's, you know, pimping in his BMW and stuff, and her and her husband are blackmailing him, you know, he's just taking care of their kid, you know, as a doctor, doing routine checkups and stuff like that, and, you know, they shared a dance, him and this younger, trailer trashy type blondie, and then, you know, they end up hooking up, and then the jealous husband, and then you've also got it's not unnecessary sexual orientation for the teacher, but, you know, the fact that they try to play it as a tropey plot point, in the fact that, oh, maybe he's into his students, and this one student who gets sick with anemia, the vampirism at one particular point, and he's like, no, you're either drunk or you're, you know, coming off some drugs, come back to my house. They played that as a plot point, and that's even beyond, you know, Eva, the, you know, person who's renting the house to Mears, and the, you know, older dude who she has this thing with now since her husband's dead. It's just like, there is so much unnecessary, just romantic or lack thereof, like, just, you know, nasty, just unnecessary drama. And the nasty part comes in, as I think right now, in the fact that one of the first to be turned, who, you know, character from the book as well, you know, working at, you know, both the junkyard, and, you know, helping move in some stuff, you know, once Stryker and all them are kind of, Stryker I should say, and all them are coming in, the guy who rents the house, he's like kind of got the nasty feels for his daughter, as they imply at one particular point, and she has the thing with the disabled guy. It's just one thing after another of unnecessary additional implementation, and none of it really falls very well. And this is where it sucks, because of the fact that everything else, from, you know, the Fuego even the fact that they shot it in Australia, you know, it still looks pretty good to be Maine, despite, I don't know how they handle the snow or anything like that. I don't necessarily think it snows in Australia. Please comment me for being an uninitiated dumbass in the comments below if in fact it does, but the film looks good, okay, and performances are actually from the crew very solid, you know. Even though James Cromwell does not get the type of screen time as Father Callahan that I think he deserves, he's good when he's in there. Rob Lowe is a very serviceable Ben Mears, and he's not bad. You know, Donald Pleasance, everybody in this is actually pretty good. They brought in some big names, and the big names deliver. The problem being that the script adds in all of this other stupid silliness, and even worse, despite being TNT, when it gets to gore, when it finally gets to gore, it's good. You know, the vampire teeth don't look too bad when some peeps are finally getting stabbed through, especially in the climax when you see a stake actually going through the physical torso and the pumping organs, although I'm not necessarily sure that the organs would still be pumping, you know, based on all this, but I mean, even the doctor who played Blanca in the Street Fighter movie, who has this relational intertwinement with the trailer trash chick, it's not bad. You know, his acting is not bad. The kid is just not, it's not on par of a performance. Honestly, all of the kids in this, just not so very good, and, you know, a lot of the supporting players just okay, but there's a few scenes where I don't want to give credit. I suppose that I have to give just the slightest amount of it. Mears, where he is fighting another unnecessary, as I think about it, romantic intertwinement. There is the ex-boyfriend of Susan, who is one of the workers out in, you know, he's a moving guy, he works at the dump and so on and so forth, and so he's the former flame of Susan's. Him and Ben get in a fight. They both end up in the drunk tank. And there is a particular, almost like a drain pathway, and it's almost like a just connecting type, you know, area between the two jail cells, and his character is kind of crawling through that at one particular point. That scene is effective. There's another one where this particular bus driver, who rules with an iron stick of sorts, you know, he has all of the kids that he's kind of tormented. It's very Trick or Treat, you know, before Trick or Treat. And, you know, that's not bad. It's actually fairly interesting, where all of these vampiric children jump on the bus and he has to deal with all of them. So, once again, just like with Mercy, all of the signs are pointing to the fact that the film looked good, the performances were pretty solid, and the effects, despite being slightly dated in certain circumstances, you know, and even the gore, when we get to see it, it's not bad. But the unnecessary inclusion of so many other stupid subplots really just derails this film from being anything that interesting. And also, since it came out in 2004, we have the unnecessary inclusion of, oh, you know, Ben Mears has been changed from, like, he was in Afghanistan and he was in the custody of the Taliban, and then the guys who rescued him were all killed, and he wrote a book about it. It was something that was happening a lot in the early 2000s, you know, when the War on Terror was really starting to hit initially, and so many stories and films and whatever that didn't have any necessary right to include this plot point of sorts decided to do it. And so this is another one that falls victim to that. So it's not as bad as a lot of other things that you've seen, but I must say, I had more fun with A Return to Salem's Lot. Shout out to, you know, Mike Moriarty and Larry Cohen and the absolute bonkers stupidity of that film, but I had more fun with that film. You know, this film really strives the most when it's recreating the beats from the actual novel itself, and when they're finally confronting vampires, and when you see the nature of where the town has progressed to without spoiling anything. That's where stuff is really, really good. But minor little bit, I'm guessing that since this came out in June of 2004, and since The Wolves of the Kala came out in, boy, I want to say like November of 2003. I know it was fall of 2003, so if me double checking facts before doing this, you know, don't get me and don't just, you know, crucify me, so to speak. Vampires. Anyway, there is some certain character changes done with Father Callahan that I guess we're left open-ended enough with the way Salem's Lot ends, but they are confirmed to be of a different vein if you've read Wolves of the Kala. So I'm assuming this screenwriter, who did not have a lot to his credit, was not privy to those notes, and the fact that Father Callahan is one of Stephen King's best characters ever. That's not just because of the fact that I am a Callahan as well, birth name, all that shizzle. But yeah, once again, I guess Twinnyverse rules out, you know, the fact that this is not my Salem's Lot. And I hated so much more on this movie in previous instances than I even think I have in this. Added story ideas suck in this, but they're... I don't know. It says here on the back, and that's why I'm referring to it. The Los Angeles Times, downright spooky. Salem's Lot grabs you, pulls you close, then scares you silly. It makes me wonder if this particular critic, you know, Tony, what's his name, Tony Pecky, did he have any initiation or association or just prior cognizance of the source material or the Tobe Hooper miniseries? I really don't know. Could this be viewed of its own merits as its own thing? To a degree, I guess. And that's where this is me trying to reel it back. I feel like the hate train was flowing very vehemently initially because I just got done watching this afternoon. And if not for all the chatter about it in the Facebook group, I wouldn't have rushed this to the forefront for today's episode. I was originally going to do screenplays in general, which is what I just got in the mail from Cemetery Dance, and so that was going to be the original discussion. But as such, there's only 2 other films besides series films that are going to be here in the Films That Forgot the Face of Their Father. We have Creepshow 3 that had nothing to do with either Romero or Stephen King. I'm still going to be doing that. And then there's No Smoking, which is a reinterpretation of Quitters Inc. that I believe is from India, if I'm not mistaken. And then Cecil, Marcia, and myself have made kind of a pact to go through both the rest of the Children of the Corn franchise and the 2 Mangler sequels, because we have the Scream Factory special edition with the original uncut version, once again Tobe Hooper and Robert Englund starring in that, of the Mangler based on the short story that appeared most prominently in Night Shift, based on, Stephen King's short story that I know, man, I'm trying to remember if it was Cavalier or one of those, or Cavalier or whatever, one of those other magazines that he was publishing stuff in originally. But yes, Scream Factory is about to release that, and so you'll see our reviews of the Mangler series and the Children of the Corn series proper coming very, very soon. But yeah, I guess I will wrap things up here because I'm sick of talking about this crappy adaptation, this craptation, that doesn't quite work, but I'm on Jaime and Fuego. You can find me in all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and the YouTubies. I just watched Ralph Wrecks the Internet, or whatever the hell they're calling it, this past week. There's going to be a review of that. I just set up a new recording space, which is actually in my recording space here at the studio in Fuego, as I so affectionately call it now. We moved around some stuff for my band Chiron. If you want to hear any of our metal music where there's screaming and singing, you can find us at Chiron Band AZ on Reverb Nation. And most importantly though, make sure to like, share, and subscribe here on The Horror Show. We do 2 to 3 episodes a day in certain instances. Trailer reactions, boy, the Godzilla one for that new film did very good for us recently. We also have film reviews coming up of everything from The Domestics to my take on Marrowbone. Boy, we just did Cam. We're basically getting caught up on lots of stuff in the past year of 2018 that we did not get to when it was initially released, but there's also convention coverage, there's video game Let's Plays, you name it, a ton of fun coverage. So I guess until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, make sure to check out the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group. Request a entry. I am the sole moderator and admin type guy, and we do nothing but awesome palaver all about Cy King on there. I look forward to seeing all of you there. And until we can have more of that palaver, hasta luego, sin amigos. I'm hopeful that we reconnect sooner rather than later. And until that instance occurs, say thank you, and remember, stay scared. And in this case, just read Stephen King's Salem's Lot, because this, I don't know, I just feel like it gives a disservice to the dude who's my favorite author.